I don't look mature. Listen, don't let your lying eyes fool you now. This is spray paint. This spray paint.
Welcome to another episode of You Grow Girl podcast. I'm your host, Stacey C. I hope that you all have enjoyed the last episode on healing. Now, if you're commuting or on a lunch break or lying awake wondering, is this it? This episode is for you. Today, we are talking about something that a lot of us feel, but don't always say out loud. Maybe you worked hard to get here, and now you're here and you feel drained, resentful, stuck, or just numb. Maybe the people around you are telling you to be grateful, but inside you are thinking, is this it? I don't like it. And we're going to talk about why this season may be carrying a lesson you'll use for the rest of your life. Sometimes the things that drain you is also the teacher that grows you. Today, I invited two guests to join me in this conversation. Please let me reintroduce Kenisha back to the show.
Morning.
So Kenisha works in the mental health field. She is my best friend, and she was on the first full episode of You Grow Girl podcast, season 1, and hopefully our in-house resident therapist. Also, I am pleased and honored to welcome our first male guest, Cliffvon. He is a community leader, speaker, life coach, mentor, owner of Cliffvon How Consulting, and a photographer.
Good morning.
Welcome,
Good morning.
Cliff.
Good morning, everybody.
So please join me in welcoming Kenisha and Cliffvon to the show. Kenisha, do you want to reintroduce yourself to anybody, to the audience?
Like you said, I work in the mental health field. I'm a mom, a daughter, friend, and just here to learn and grow with everybody.
Cliffvon?
I think the only thing that I would add is I'm a descendant of greatness. That's it.
All right. Before I dwell into our topic, I want to give a disclaimer. This episode is not about having a midlife crisis, okay? I understand that if you look at us, the audience, we may look a little mature, but we are not discussing having a midlife crisis.
Speak for
So I just want to
yourself.
give that disclaimer. I'm sorry?
Speak for yourself.
What kind of way is that to welcome the first male guest? I'm just be honest.
Well, I don't want people to hear this topic and think, are they talking about a midlife crisis? Because we do look mature.
I don't look mature. Listen, don't let your lying eyes fool you now. This is spray paint. This spray paint.
Okay, some of us are in denial and some of us live in reality that we are mature individuals and this is not a midlife crisis. So, we don't talk enough about what it feels like when you've done everything right and it still feels wrong. If that's you, you're not alone. The season that you are in can be a relationship, a career path, or a life transitions. And life transitions meaning not a midlife crisis. That means like an empty nester, retirement, or divorce. So first, I want you to understand, audience, that you can normalize it. So being unhappy in your season does not mean that you're ungrateful or that you're failing. It means you're listening. And now you're asking yourself, why am I unhappy? What's wrong with me? And what exactly feels off? So is it the work, the environment, the schedule, the values? Now, I want to start with my guest, Cliffvon. When did you find yourself in your season of unhappiness? So I want you to share your story.
I think for me, my season of unhappiness, it came right after a job switch, right? I had transitioned to a new job. I had been working for an agency that I loved. I loved the work. I loved the agency. But I was young. The agency was small. It appeared to have a glass ceiling. So in order to grow, I was going to need to step out and go to a larger agency. So I went to a larger agency. And for the first year at the larger agency was pretty good. But right around the 1 year mark, I could tell it wasn't a good fit for me. And it just got terrible quickly after 1 year in. And I felt like I couldn't escape, right? I couldn't get out of there. There was a hiring freeze on. And so I was just stuck and it just wasn't good.
Okay. Kenisha?
I will say for me, it was a relationship. I was married. I can't really say when timeline of when I started to feel like it wasn't right. I think it was a gradual progression of things, but I just came to the point where same thing. I wasn't happy. I woke up every day. I wasn't happy. I wasn't satisfied. I felt like in my marriage, I was a single parent, which I shouldn't have felt like. So it just was a gradual lead up of things that continued to just make me feel unhappy until I got to the point where I was like, this is not working. This is not going to work for me. I can't wake up every day like this.
Right. We also want to give another disclaimer. This is not a show about bashing any men or people in their
What man that's on here?
or Kenisha's former ex-husband. We're not bashing him either. So when did you know that you hated that season? Kenisha, do you want to speak to that? When did you know?
I will say for me, there were a lot of changes going on in our situation. We were buying a home, a lot of moving. It was during COVID. My kids were home consistently. And there were just a lot of things that happened that we didn't communicate about. We didn't talk about. And when we did communicate, it wasn't productive communication. And I think, with doing all that and all the pressures of just everyday life and all the changes that were going on, finally came to the realization that I can't do this anymore. Unfortunately, it was in the middle of us buying a home and all that kind of stuff. So there were things that were already in play that we couldn't put a pause on. But that was when I would say I realized for sure, like, this is just not working anymore.
Right. Cliffon?
So, I knew just my supervisor, just sort of like the way she was moving, some of the stuff that was happening. I knew it wasn't a good fit, and I knew I needed to get out of there. And upon knowing that I needed to get out of there, and I knew it wasn't a good fit, but the moment that I started feeling trapped, it just it just felt like the walls were closing in on me. And there was something that Kanisha said that it kind of triggered a thought for the previous question.
Mm-hmm.
When you wake up in the morning and you about to start your day and you feel like, oh my goodness, I dread this. I absolutely loathe this. I don't want to do this. That's not normal. That's not natural, and it's not healthy, right? I mean, I shouldn't say it's not normal, because that is some people's reality. It was my reality for probably about 8 years. So I'm not going to say it's not normal. It's not healthy though. But that feeling, that when you get up, you dread, because she says she dreaded it. When you dread going to do something, that was the red flag for me. And I had that. I experienced all of that, Kanisha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know for me, same. I dreaded it, and it was for a career change. Not a career change, but coming to be honest with myself about I no longer wanted to participate in the career that I was in. So it's like the regret. But I want to ask you before I speak on my own experience. Were you afraid to admit those things out loud? Like, Cliffon, were you afraid to say, this was the wrong move for me, like to own that mistake?
No, just to put it succinctly, no. I knew right away it was a bad move. It was the wrong move. But what I had to come to grips with is I didn't pray on that move. I didn't. I didn't ask God to guide or lead me. I jumped for more money and growth. Never once did I consider the spiritual realm. So now it wasn't a problem for me to admit that this was the wrong move. But the problem is I felt stuck. I couldn't move. I couldn't get out of it. I mean, I could have, but I'm a public servant. I consider myself the people's champ. I gave the people 27 years of public service. And so I didn't want to move out of that public service realm. And because there was a hiring freeze, I couldn't. I would tell anybody that would listen, this was the wrong move, but that didn't change the fact that I couldn't move at that moment.
Right. Kanisha?
I would say there was a fear that came with it. Just like a fear of the unknown. I had been married for a while. I had 3 kids. Like I said, we were buying a home. There was a lot of factors that played into not being ready to make a move. And so, it was a plan. I had to think about the plan, think about all the possibilities, my plan B, plan C, and just, if I do this, this could happen. If I do that, that could happen. And like Clifon said, praying, I prayed about it. I did. What is the best thing for me to do in this situation? So there was a lot of fear.
Right. Well, for me, again, like I stated, I was afraid to admit that I no longer was fulfilled in this career. So I was afraid to admit it not only to other people, but to myself. And then I no longer felt like it's inspiration from the career that I'm in or that I was in. Because I feel like this is my career. And I no longer felt the desire to serve in my career path. So I really struggle with that. Since we're talking about, the fears and things, when did you start to turn the regret into a lesson? So it's like sometimes like in a career path or a job, you're unhappy in that season and everything, like Kanisha, you talking about your relationship. When did it start to transition from the regret into a lesson? So, Cliff, we can start with you.
So for me, the lesson part, because the regret set in early. It was the lesson part that was substantially down the road. Like I've said, I felt like I couldn't get out of there, and I wound up being stuck there for a prolonged period of time. I mean, years upon years. And when I realized it was a lesson, the lesson found me. I didn't find the lesson, it found me. I was complaining to each and every one of my friends that would listen. And I'm not a complainer. Like the people who know me, like I'm not a complainer, but I was complaining about this job. I was complaining about being stuck. And a friend of mine, her mom's just was a real faith worker, right? And she's true, to the word, true to the scripture and true to her belief and her faith in God. And she said through my friend, God has Cliff there for a reason. And so my friend relayed the message, and I gotta be honest, right? When I first heard the message, I didn't receive the message. I heard it, I didn't receive it, right? And I say this because when I heard the message, I said, okay. Then I started thinking, I'm trying to live well, right? For what I'm going through, I don't think I've done anything for God to put me through this trial, right? Now, I'm not perfect, right? But I didn't even go through this trial. I was in a it felt like prison, right? But I heard it and I knew, right? She's one of the most, one of the most faithful servants of God that I know, know. And so I'm like, okay, right? And then I'd say probably, I don't know, maybe 6, 8 months after that. In my job, I had the opportunity to help lots of people and to help people who were among some of the most vulnerable people in our population. And one day, some paperwork came across my desk. And when this paperwork came across my desk, I recognized this name. Now, mind you, in the work that I was doing, I probably had the ability to directly impact probably about 145 people, very vulnerable people's lives. And, most of the time the paperwork was a paperwork. So I was going to do my job, whether I'm miserable at the job or not. I'm going to do my job at a high level. That's what I do. But a name came across that I recognized. It was a classmate, someone that I was very close with. And so I took a particular interest in making sure that my friend, my childhood friend, was going to be straight. And so for any of you all who may work in service provision, y'all know that there are always levels to service. And you know that there's always red tape, bureaucratic stuff. I wanted to make sure that my friend was in this crisis, that my friend was not going to have to navigate all that stuff. I wanted to make sure that this path was a easy path. And I also wanted to make sure that my friend was going to get the highest tier of care. And so, I put my job in jeopardy a little bit, and, I kind of coached them on how to make certain you say the right things and do the right things in order to get the highest level of service and the highest level of care. And so he did those things. And my friend, he came, he made it. He made it. He came in, it was a recovery issue. He was an addict, and he made it through his hospitalization stay. And he actually started being a mentor with his service provider. And he made it through that. He transitioned back to the community. And when he transitioned back to the community, probably about 5, 6 months after he transitioned back to the community, he had a relapse. And the relapse that he had ultimately led to his demise. Now, around the same time, after he had made it through his hospitalization stay, I had an opportunity to finally leave that agency. And I did. I left it and I went back to the first agency where I was happy. And then his demise came about 5 to 6 months after I was back at my new agency. And when that happened and I sat there and I was trying to reflect on what had gone on in my life in the last 2 years or so, that's when that message hit me that my friend's mom had said that God has Cliff there for a reason. My reason was to make sure that my friend had that opportunity. And once I had done that, then he let me go on and move on to another opportunity. And then there's lessons inside lessons too, because I told you, my friend ultimately succumbed to his addiction, but his provider explained that he helped 20 or 30 other people that were in his same position when he served as a mentor with them. So God was making sure that I was there to help him so that he could help those other people, because it wasn't necessarily for him and it wasn't necessarily for me. And I know that was a bit long-winded, but it speaks to the lesson, right? That's how the lesson, I got it. I didn't receive it at first. Right. And then, sadly, shortly after I received the message, we lost the messenger. All those things. And for those of you who know me, like, I'm not a Bible thumper, right? This is the most you'll ever hear me talk about my faith and my faith system. But this is truth in this situation about how I came to see the lesson and how I came to live through the lesson.
Right. Before we move on to Kenisha, the friend, do I know this friend that gave you the message?
You do. It was your mother.
So you admitted on my podcast that we're
I was
friends.
going to say,
We were
that was a
friends.
big step.
I was friends with your mom, and I was friends with your offspring.
No, you were friends with me too. Kenisha, you want to talk about your lesson?
Definitely. It was a long lesson for me as well. Anybody who knows me or my divorce, my situation, it took a long time, much longer than I thought it would. So I was separated for a while. We went through a divorce. It seemed like a very, very long time. And then afterwards, there was a lot of aftermath as well. So I think that for me, I didn't learn the lesson until I actually was going through the divorce. The regret set in early, I think, because there were a lot of things that just I was unhappy about. But I think the lesson in, just learning what I should do moving forward and learning how I could take this situation and do things differently in life. I think that came during the divorce. I had kids, particularly a daughter who was a teenager. And for me, I was like, am I showing her how I would want her to be in a relationship, or the relationship that I would want for her? Am I showing my sons the way that I think that they should treat somebody that they're in a relationship with? And like Cliff said something about like being happy. And I'm a very happy go lucky person. I wake up smiling. I love what I do. I enjoy being with my kids. I enjoy being with my friends and family. So, me just learning, like going through this situation really changed who I was. I felt like in a lot of ways I lost myself. So, kind of like finding myself again through the divorce and finding the things that I loved and the things that made me happy. But that didn't come, like I said, until the end, going through it and just experiencing a lot of things and, seeing people differently. Um, and, just trying to do things different for myself and my kids.
Right. Well, for me, I'm still trying to figure out what my lesson is. Cliff talked about finding that spiritual guidance. And Kenisha, you mentioned praying as well. And Cliff, you talked about the guidance. You said, it came from my mother. Kenisha, what was some of your guidance that you had, besides you praying?
My mom is a pastor. So, of course, she will stand behind me 100%, but she's honest with me. My parents are very real with me. So, no matter how I feel, no matter what I want to do, even though they're always in my corner, they're always going to tell me the right thing. So, she really talked to me a lot, prayed for me a lot, prayed with me a lot, and that helped. And then I did have somebody that I worked with. She was an older lady. She was actually my employee. And she noticed some things were different about me at work. She's like, "Look, you're not your normal self. This isn't like you." So I had shared a couple of things with her, and she had told me something that I didn't know about her, was that she had went through a divorce like early in life. She's a little bit older than me. And she just shared a lot of things that she went through in her divorce, and it resonated with me. It was very similar to a lot of things that I was going through. So I think it was nice to be able to like and see what she went through, to feel like I wasn't alone. Cause even though I wasn't alone, I did have some people that were like, this is not the right thing. You need to work it out. You got married, spiritually, that's not the right thing to do. According to the Bible, once you're married, you're married. So I think having other people say, you know what, it is okay. And if you're not happy, you're not happy. You got to do what is best for you. I think that was, that was really helpful.
I will say that I was one of those people early on that was definitely team your marriage early on. Again, this is not to bash your ex-husband. I just also want to follow up. So with both of you about the spiritual guidance, was it something when you received it, did it allow you to understand your purpose? And Cliff, we can start with you.
Yeah, I would say absolutely. At the point when I received it, when I first heard it, I was trying to figure it all out. But at the point when I received it, it absolutely reinforced what my purpose was. And then sadly, right, because I had transitioned on to another position, I thought about how much more impactful I could have been to all of the people that I helped, not just my classmates. So I wound up having just a tad bit of remorse at that point, right, that I could have done more for others.
Kenisha, what about you?
I agree with Cliff. I didn't want to hear it at first. I didn't want to hear anything anybody had to say that was positive or anything anybody had to say that, just was against what I wanted in life. But I will say, once I finally received it, it definitely helped me realize what my purpose is. Like you said, when we started, I'm in the mental health field. It's easy to talk the talk, very easy to tell people what to do, to tell people how to cope, to tell people how to move forward. But it's very, very different when you have to live it. And when you can say, look, I know how you feel because I've been through it. And I know how you feel because I'm still going through it. So I would definitely say that it definitely contributed to, my purpose and just being able to be the best person I can be in general.
That's like something I always say. And, I've always had this conversation with you on, Kenisha, probably with you as well, Cliff, that experience is like the best teacher when you are going through life and anything. For me to kind of touch base on what Cliff talked about, being angry and being able to now realize that you could have helped more people. And that's something that I'm struggling with. And this is a conversation that Kenisha and I have had offline. I've questioned in any of the times in my life because I always feel like, people are there for, in your life for a reason and a season. And understand too, to be able to get to where you need to get to in life, God will put people in your life to help you as well. And I've questioned through my difficult season right now is or were there any people that were unhappy in their season, but yet they were impactful or helpful to me? I've questioned that these people were in my life for a reason, but yet were they unhappy in their season? Because I really pray that no one was unhappy in their season while, helping me and doing what God's purpose was for me in my life at that particular moment, you know? Have any of you thought about that just through your your life transitions? Have you ever thought about because Cliff, you mentioned, how unhappy you were in your season, yet you were helpful and impactful to someone else's life. Have you ever thought or considered that while you were unhappy in that season and going through different seasons of your life, there may have been people who were impactful to you that may have been feeling the same?
I never thought about it. I'm thinking about it now, and I recognize and understand that certainly, right, it's a possibility. I think as we, think about the messenger, for me, right, just not knowing that when I got that message, when I got that message from the messenger, I had no idea that the messenger would be leaving us. Um, about a year or so later. I had no idea. I didn't even truly get a chance to rejoice in my newfound freedom. With as it relates with the messenger. But I also think about the converse to that question, Stacey. Even though I was miserable, I was helping other people. The one thing I did not allow my situation to do was to keep me from doing the work. I do impactful work, and the work that I did truly changed some people's lives. And so I never let my anger or my disdain for where I was change that. Like I never went into work and said, you know what? I hate this place. I'm not doing nothing. I never did that.
Mhm.
Never. Now listen, if I got off work at 4 o'clock, I'm leaving 4 o'clock, not 4:01, not 4:15. Now I did that. I'm not gonna sit here and lie to y'all. Now I did that, but I never once between 8 and 4 said I'm not doing anything because the work was too important.
So no overtime.
Absolutely not. I wouldn't look. I wasn't eligible for overtime anyway. But if I was, ain't no way.
So no overtime and you weren't volunteering for anything, huh?
No extras, no freebies.
What about you, Kenisha? Did you
I
think
won't,
about
and
that?
you're right. We have talked about this. I won't say that I've thought about other people's unhappiness, but I definitely think about like moving forward, just
Mhm.
making sure, like you said, that you can't change. People are going to be unhappy. People are going to go through things, but just changing the way that I interact with people, changing the way I interact with my kids, my family, my friends, because I didn't want the way that I felt to rub off on other people. Like, I didn't want people to look at me and say, "Oh my God, she's miserable." Like you said at work, I enjoy my job. I value what I do at my job. So I never, when the lady at work was like, "Hey, you're not yourself," I was like, "Okay, I don't want people to know that." And I recently had a conversation with one of my coworkers because we were talking about somebody who was going through something else. And she said, "Kanisha, you came to work every day. You were going through a divorce for like 3 years. You came to work every day and nobody even knew unless you told them." And I was like, That was on purpose. I don't want the things that I go through to affect other people because that's my situation. When I come to work, I try my best to, I'm at work. This is separate. This is different. And of course, we're all human, but I really, really try to make sure that whatever I'm going through in life, I don't let that spill over into my other situations. Of course, I vent, usually to you, Stacey, but I try not to let it affect other aspects of my life. And that's hard, but it definitely is something that I think I focus more on after hearing, "Hey, you know what? Something's different about you." Because I was like, I don't want people to know that something's different. I want to be able to keep this. This is mine. It's private. I want to be able to move through it the way I move through it. And, when I'm ready to deal with it and talk about it, then I'm ready to deal with it and talk about it.
Kanisha, is that like that adage folks say, I don't look like what I've been through?
Most definitely.
You both are so mature.
Working on that.
Huh?
We're working on that.
Which is, I guess. I will say
And
this. I had a conversation recently with my aunt, Pastor Jacobs, who was on my last episode, and she said, "Try to find something small that you really enjoy." And I said, "Going home in the weekends." But I did. I was able to find something. I have a couple coworkers I enjoy working with. So I'm
and I
sorry,
was
Clifford, you gonna say something?
No, I was just wanting to add, as you were sharing that, you want people to know and understand, what you going through. Be careful, right?
Mhm.
Because the peace robbers, right? The people who wanna steal your peace and the people who wanna rob your happiness, that just lets them know and it gives them gratification that they can impact you in that way. When you
Right.
when you walk in there and you walk in and you walking in your light and you walking in your purpose, whether you loathe that place or love it, those people have no idea where you really are. They don't know if the things that they're doing, if they're being effective. And I say that wholeheartedly. I
Mhm.
nicknamed my supervisor at that job I didn't like Satan. And I was not ever going to give her the satisfaction of knowing that she was bothering my peace. And I didn't say this earlier, but on top of, just being a public servant and wanting to remain a public servant, when that season hit, I had
Mhm.
just had a child.
Yeah.
So it was the first time in my life that I had to consider another life as it related to the decisions that I was going to make because I was younger back then. And that version of me, I'd have told them people what they could do with that job, where they could put that job, and how fast they could do it. But with a newborn in the fold and a fiance at the time, I had to suck it up. And I said to my mom's youngest brother, and he made me focus. I said to him, they are lucky. They are lucky I got these things going on because this is exactly what I would do. And now my mom's youngest brother, he's only 3 years older than me, right?
Mhm.
And he looked at me in a very uncle-ish way. He said, it's time to grow up because grown people have to do and act in ways that they don't want to. They
Mhm.
do what they have to do, not what they want to do. And I felt like a little boy. I felt like a little boy to shrink and take it.
Think opposite of what Cliff said. In going through my divorce and making that decision, that was the first time in a very long time that I didn't put other people before me. I always made the decision of like, okay, this is what I got to do for my kids. This is what I need to do for my family. And I think for me, I felt initially like it was a very selfish decision to get divorced. But I had to come to that realization that like, this is what I need to do for me. My kids are going to be okay. If I'm okay, my kids are going to be okay. If I'm okay, my family's going to be okay. But this is what I need to do for me and not really considering the way that it was going to affect other people, but still making the decision that I thought was best for me.
Right. So you chose you.
Definitely.
Yep, I understand. Well, I will say, Cliff, too, really quickly, as you were talking about the messenger with my mom, how she gave you the message was, I saw a photograph of you on social media and you were saying you were doing the people's work, but you didn't look happy. And I commented on it and I said, you doing the people's work, but you look unhappy. And I think I showed my mother at the time. And that's when she told me to relay that message to you and things. So that's how your message came about.
I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful for it.
From your season, what were some lessons that or teachable moments that you gained from being in that season? For instance, for me, I'm now able to speak publicly. But that's something that, I learned like in college, like speech class and stuff. But now I'm like, I'm not afraid or shy to speak in front of people that I don't know, like such as like being on this podcast. And I'm now comfortable in understanding that not everyone's going to like you and that people will talk about you and everything and not that everyone will support you, as well as being able to work by myself. Because usually I'm a type of person I enjoy working with other people, but I'm learning in this new season that I'm okay with working by myself. So, what is some of you guys teachable moments that you learned in your season?
I would say for me, choosing me. That's a big thing for me. It's not something that I did very often. So I think like self-care, choosing me and practicing what I preach. I
Mhm.
tell people every day how to deal with things. And I learn very, very quickly I have to put some of those things into practice. You know, very fortunately, I haven't had to deal with a lot of like struggles when it comes to, families and relationships and things like that. Minor things, but nothing big. And I would say it's a huge thing. Divorce is big. And I don't think I saw that at first. I was just like, okay, I'm getting divorced. I'm gonna move on. Everything's gonna be fine. I learned very quickly that's not the way it works. There are things that linger for a very long time. And especially when you have kids and you have built a life together and families are intertwined. So I think, I one big lesson that I learned is I always knew that I was a very strong person, but I learned very quickly how strong I really am. And also kind of how my kids feel about me. Like I said, my daughter was a teenager when we were going through the divorce, like 16, 17, becoming a young adult. And there were things that her and I talked about that I felt really proud of because she was proud. And she was like, look, you may think that you did this, this, and this, but I'm telling you from watching you, this is how I see you. So that was really, really important for me to kind of see myself through somebody else's eyes. It's just my headache.
Cliff,
And
what
and
about
then
you?
for me, I learned 2 lessons. The first lesson that I learned, of course, is, consult God, right? Stick to your faith. None of this stuff that's happening around us is happening in a silo or a vacuum. And, if you want to know if this is truly right for you spiritually, you're going to need that spiritual guidance. That's the first lesson that I learned. The second lesson I learned, it is more about reinforcement, and that's to be where your feet are. And what I mean by being where your feet are is to be present and live in the moment. When I was there and I felt stuck, I talked about the fact that it still did not change who I am, right? It didn't make me change what my purpose was in that job, right? And I want to share this story. So I talked about how the classmate that I helped ultimately succumbed to his addiction. And I talked about how I had that little bit of remorse because though I was finally free of that one job, I went back to the job I loved. And when I went back to the job that I loved, I truly thought that I was just going to coast out the rest of my days, that it was the day that the Lord made, and I was going to be happy and rejoice in it for the rest of my career, right? Just coast on out. I was happy here. I loved the work, and that was what I was going to do. That's what I thought, because 3 years in, and those 3 years was rolling. 3 years in, COVID hit. And when COVID hit, I'm the type of person, I'm not antisocial, but I'm not the most social person on the planet either, right? And so COVID hit and we're all stuck in the house, and I needed to get out. So I started exercising more, walking, spending that time with nature. And as I'm out walking, and I was a news hound, right? So I always listen to the news. That's part of my undergraduate experience. I'm out, I'm walking, and the situation with George Floyd happens. Now I'm happy in my job. I worked in the criminal justice area. I was happy in my job. And I saw what happened with George Floyd. And I came in because I would walk on a break, right? Lunch break or whatever, I would walk in. I came in, and when I came in, I sat down at the computer. And when I sat down at the computer, I said, I got to do something. I absolutely have to do something. And so I said, I don't know what, but I have to do something. And about the next day, my friends started emailing me postings for this job at a school district. And I'm like, You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? I'm saying to myself, I'm not doing that again.
Happy I'm coasting.
Right, right. Good. I walked the next day. I mean, I was walking, I said, you know what? I'd always wanted to try 3 different levers in state government. And so I had done 2. You know, I had done the behavioral health, which is, you know, where I was in that job that I couldn't stand. And I had done criminal justice, which was the job that I loved. This offered me an opportunity to go into education, which would have been the 3rd lever. And I kind of did. I always wanted to, you know, give education sphere a try. So I said, you know what? I'll just apply. And I applied, and I blew the interview panel away. And you know what I learned? You know how I hated that job that I was stuck in? But the skill set that I received from working that job is what made me uniquely qualified
For that new
in competing for this job in the education realm. I spent the last 5 years before I retired working in the education realm. And the one thing that as I would be providing professional development to educators and to providing service to students, the one thing that they never could fathom is how I had this unique skill set, and it came from that job that I couldn't stand. And so that was a lesson there, right? Be where my feet are. And you don't know. You don't know the blessing. You don't know the blessing in a situation that you think is horrible.
blessings for yourself and for others.
Yeah. Do you have any type of effect like that?
I will say definitely when I was talking about just the things that I learned through, the divorce and things like that, I would say that I said it was a long time. It was like a long separation, long divorce, a lot of, back and forth to court, a lot of different things. And I would say I kind of felt the same way. Like you want to rush through it because it's easy to just walk away and be done. But going through it and learning all those lessons and being present and dealing with everything that comes with it, it helped me have no regrets. Because a lot of people have asked me, Kenisha, do you regret this? Do you regret that? Do you wish you would have done this differently? And I can honestly say no, I don't, because I gave it the time and I did what I felt like I needed to do in the moment. And I think a lot of people don't do that. Like you said, you're just ready to say, look, I'm going to coast. I'm going to do what I need to do. It's easy to just say, you know what? I'm just going to walk away. I'm not going to deal with this anymore. I'm going to move on. I'm going to take what I need and we'll deal with the rest on the back end. But I think actually working through all those things and doing things how I felt the right way to do them was made me feel on the other end, all the other things that have happened since then, I can easily say I don't have any regrets. When people say, well, do you wish you would have stayed longer? Do you wish you would have did this different? You wish you would have went to counseling? You wish you would have done that? No, I feel like in that time, because I gave myself the time to feel those emotions, to do what I felt like was the right thing, and I didn't rush it, I felt like I can walk away with no regrets. And I don't know if a lot of people can always say that. Like you said, you did what you needed to do. You tried those different realms and those different professions. So you feel like you're fulfilled. And that's how I feel. I feel like, okay, I was fulfilled in what I did. I don't regret being married and I don't regret being divorced. I feel like I did what I needed to do at the time that I needed to do it, and it was the right thing to do.
All right. So I just want to ask you guys a few more questions and then, we'll end this conversation because I know we can go on and on and on and on and on about it. But what was some red flags that told you it was time to go?
I think I know I was gonna say, I think I talked about just waking up miserable and not being my normal self. That was the biggest red flag for me. And trying, trying to do different things, trying to work things out and it just not working. It felt like, it's not meant to be. So if I'm trying everything I can and it's just not panning out in any positive way, then what else can I do?
I'm right there wholeheartedly, right? I concur. The red flag was early. It was early for me. Just look, pray a little bit before you make some of these decisions, right? Just speak some spiritual guidance. And talked about the concept of being where your feet are. Seek some spiritual guidance and be where your feet are.
Right. I know for me, it's been Sunday scaries, as they call it. So that anxiety of knowing that you have to go to work. So, and it's like panic and that constant, that chronic dread of knowing that you have to go to work. That was a big red flag for me. What was some green lights for your next step? So, what was some things that were, that you were like, okay, this is my next step. This is my plan forward.
I think the very opposite. When I did start to move and what I felt like was the right thing, things just seemed to work out. My path was aligned. It worked out the way that I felt like it needed to work out or that I felt like it should work out. And then also, like I talked about my kids. A big thing for me was how are my kids going to be affected by this situation? They've lived with me and their father since they were born, and Brianna from when she was very little. So it's how are they going to be affected? And once I realized that they were okay, and we had those conversations and that they were going to be okay, it was a green light for me. Like, okay, well, this is going to be okay.
And I think the green light for me, believe it or not, even though I was miserable, our department, right? And I worked for the largest department in the state of Delaware at that time. I talked about how the job that I did impacted the lives of about 140 people. We received the Governor's Excellence Award for a program that we started and that I was a integral part of the leadership in creating that. I have that actual award, right? Well, I have the plaque that they gave us. I have, and since then, I've had that prominently showcased. Now, when I was still in that job that I hated, I had it there to show Satan that you here try and make my life miserable, but everybody else around here sees the star that I am. Right. And that's for all the wrong reasons. Cause the last thing God wants you to do is be vain. Right. But he working on me. In every job since then, including I'm back working now, including my current one, that is displayed because that is my reminder that my purpose is not dictated by man.
Right.
My purpose comes from a higher authority. And if I can win awards for things that I'm doing at what has been the lowest point in my life, then God truly has something special for me.
Right. I want the audience to know that you are not the title or the situation that you are currently in. You are the person who learned, who showed up, and who cared. So sometimes that fear may set in, and you have to ask yourself, what's the cost of staying stuck, and what's the cost of trying and learning? And the most important thing is to give yourself grace. Give yourself the same grace that you would give someone else. Transitions or seasons and progress is often quiet before it becomes obvious. And I'm going to say that that is something I need to learn for myself. That these transitions is definitely a season. And the steps to move forward, I want to get into that. But I just want the audience to know that as Cliff talked on, a little bit just a moment ago, God wouldn't have you go through it unless it wasn't for your good. So, and it's a purpose in what you're going through. And to be, again, be patient and give yourself the same grace you give others. And if you are in a season of a career change, you should take it 1 week at a time. Try to rate that each day, like my aunt suggested to me, find something small that you like about that job and make a skills list. I know for me, I have, been able to receive some trainings and things and to, improve on my skills. Cliff, that's something that you talked about in the season for the position that you were in that you and I've had that conversation, and I'll let you talk more to that. And Kenisha, you also have talked about some different things as far as like your season and how, some steps that you've taken. I'll let you speak to that in just a moment too. And also reframe your thinking and your mindset. Like again, like my aunt suggested to me to find something that I do like. This season is showing me I value, I need, or I'm done accepting. And with this thinking, you need to know that it's important that you don't miss what God is teaching you. And you don't let that anger cloud what you're supposed to see and what you're supposed to do or learn. So, Cliffon, do you want to speak towards any steps that helped you to move forward?
Just have folks refer back to when I've talked about being where your feet are and understanding my purpose, right? Those things are the paramount things out of the conversation, right? We talked about the messenger for me. right? We talked about the message. We talked about my approach when I tell you that I'm not a Bible thumper. Y'all got to know I'm not a Bible thumper. Y'all hear me talking about, consulting your faith system first. I'm true to that. I am true to that. Those are the steps that I have for you, right? Consult your faith. Be where your feet are. Walk in your purpose. If you do those things, no matter what you going through, at the end of that, it'll be some light. It'll be some light. And I walked a dark, dusty road. I really did. I really did. But it was light at the end. And that light gonna look different for people. That light, I told y'all, I never had the chance to rejoice in my newfound freedom with the messenger. I didn't. I mean, am I lying? Am I lying, Stacey? I didn't.
No.
But I'm not sad because I know she delivered a message for me. That message was received, and now that message is permanently etched in how I move. That's legacy. That's a legacy right there. So if you do those steps, there will be light. It might not look like you want it to look, but it will be light and glow in your light.
Kenisha, what about you?
I was going to say, I agree with everything you said. And, Stacey, I know you and I have had plenty of conversations and I know it gets on your nerves, but my biggest thing is, like you said, reframing your thoughts, like finding those positive things in what you have gone through. Because there's always something positive. It's easy to say, no, it's all negative, but that's not true because there's a reason why you're there. There's a reason why you chose whatever that is. So just kind of remembering some of those things and gaining everything you can from that experience to be able to move on and be better. I think that having the positive mindset and just focusing on those positive things. And then, like I said, self-care. That was the biggest thing for me. It's, what do I need to do in this situation? Because yes, everybody else around me I need to take care of and, they need what they need, but I can't be good for somebody else if I'm not good for myself. So focusing on what is making me happy, those, internal things, not external things, but the internal things that make me happy, whether it is my faith or, just the way that I'm thinking about a situation, but just, trying to focus more on that and not necessarily on all the other stuff that clouds your judgment.
Right. And I do not get tired of the conversations you and I have. I'm sure you get tired of my conversations about BTS. So anything that we talk about, I thoroughly enjoy as well as my conversations with Cliff, because he's my friend too. All right. If you're unhappy in your season, you are not broken. You are being called higher. Let this season teach you what you need to know and then let it launch you. This week's challenge, I hope that you write your lesson, your leverage, and your leap. So, your lesson, what has this season taught you? Your leverage, what skills or stories are you taking with you? And your leap, one concrete action that you'll take within the next 72 hours. Thank you to my guests for spending time with me today. And thank you to my guests for continuing on with the show, even though I had a technical delay. Please tell the audience, Cliffvon and Kenisha, where they can find you. And Kenisha, we'll start with you.
You can find me on kenishaharmon@gmail.com.
And you can find me on Facebook at Cliffvon Howell Consulting. You can also find me at Cliffvon Howell Photography. And you can email me at cliffvon.howell@gmail.
Okay, and I'll have that information in the notes for anyone who would like to contact Cliffvon or Kenisha, aka Kenisha, my in-house therapist for You Go Girl podcast.
Hey, I think that people need to know too. I'm a Leo now, so you come at me crazy. You come at me crazy in that inbox. Listen, you gonna get Leo type behavior. I am very much a Leo now. I'm just saying.
My gosh, You Go Girl does not condone nor support that type of behavior. That is strictly Cliffvon Howell Consulting.
No, I'm saying, some people become keyboard tough guys. They get behind the keyboard and they want to tell you all the things that they didn't like or liked about the episode, right? They want to tell you that you just simply shouldn't exist. And I just want these people to know, right, that if you do that, don't let all this fool you. Do not let all this here fool you. If you do that, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
No, you say to them, thank you for listening. Please continue to subscribe and like You Grow Girl podcast.
And then I tell you, God's still working on me.
If this episode helped Please share it with someone who needs a little nudge into their next chapter. We are rooting for your courage and your clarity. I hope that you enjoy season 2, episode 4 of You Grow Girl podcast. And I'm your host, Stacey C. Please do not forget to subscribe, share, like, and comment, and make time to see you grow, girl. Until next time, keep growing. You're closer than what you think.